Back in 1793, Governor Simcoe had surveyed a route that would do double duty, a military road and a way to open the north to settlers. So a famous street was born, and named after an old political friend, Sir George Young. In time, Yonge Street became the longest street in the world and the major north-south artery in the structure of the city of Toronto, the dividing line between east and west. As workers and shoppers streamed into the city, the transportation system grew like a giant cobweb.
The history of the TTC, or Toronto Transit Commission, goes back to the 1830s. You either walked in the old town of York, or you hired a cab, horse-drawn cab. There were stagecoaches running from Toronto to points north, east, and west, particularly up Yonge Street. The first organized public transit service was a horse-drawn omnibus service, small urban stagecoach, which ran from St. Lawrence Market up Yonge Street to Yorkville, just above Bloor.
But electricity was coming. At the Toronto Industrial Exhibition in the late 1880s, the public got to see it in action. Within 15 years, the horse was out of a job.
When the TTC took over in 1921, it introduced large modern streetcars. However, the seating was wooden. They had coal stoves. They were two-man operated. The conductor was in charge of the stove. Some of these streetcars pulled trailers, so you had a second conductor in charge of the second car, also with a coal stove.
During the First World War, a massive bridge was thrown across the Don Valley to carry traffic eastwards from the growing city into the Danforth neighborhoods. The designer had a shrewd idea: add a lower streetcar deck. It wasn't used, but in time it would save the Transit Commission a fortune. It was called the Big Dig when Yonge Street was uprooted for a subway line from Union Station north to Eglinton. Later, a second line along Bloor connected to Danforth and used the lower rail deck across the viaduct.
The skyline of Toronto this week looked much the same as it has for many weeks past. And perhaps the people who live and work in its thousands of buildings look much the same too, on the surface. But the city was much different, and so were the people. Not on the surface, underground. Toronto got itself a subway, and this is the story of how it happened. In the beginning, much further back than officials care to remember now, about 12 years ago, there were nothing but plans and ideas. Eventually, almost much to the surprise of skeptical Torontonians, the plans gave way to models. Toronto was going to get a subway, really. Four and a half years ago, they went underground. Construction began. Workers burrowed and machines chewed away at the earth. The workers went underground, and Toronto forgot about it. The subway, what's that? But meanwhile, 15 million man-hours were being added up. 10,000 tons of structural steel were being welded together. And 1.5 million bags of cement were being given form. Toronto was getting a subway. Really. Above ground, Toronto was reminded of it. Its main street, Yonge Street, was ripped up and transformed into a giant boardwalk. Sidewalk superintendents became so much a part of the subway project, the Toronto Transportation Commission issued special manuals so they could help with the work. Some took it all quietly. They were just awed by the immenseness of it all. Some felt they had a duty to perform. This was going to be their subway, and they were going to build it. From the sidelines, anyway. The subway wasn't a complete subway at all, they found. Why, some of it was to run above ground, and a row of houses was requisitioned and ripped up accordingly. Probably the only ones, really with faith that it would ever come true, were the workmen. They were constructing it. They obviously had inside information. So you see, when the sign went up that it was a reality this week, it's no wonder all gathered round for the opening. Premier Frost of Ontario was there to invite Mayor Lamport to join him in throwing the all-important switch.
And place your hand on the control handle. And ladies and gentlemen, as we press it forward to give Canada's first subway the green light.
And so, $59 million later, a few more than had been bargained on 12 years earlier, Toronto got a subway. Not the largest in the world, 4.6 miles to be exact, and as Torontonians pointed out to anyone who was interesting, to anyone at all in fact, it was Canada's first. With it came a new bird, the sturdy-hearted, long-standing strap hanger. So what does it look like? What is the ride on it like? Well, say you're taking a short trip from Wellesley to Bloor. You buy your tokens, 3 for a quarter, from a machine that looks as if it might dispense gum under different conditions. The stations are walled with glass tile in 3 restful colors. Pearl gray, English eggshell, that's green, and a color the TTC calls primrose, that's yellow. And naturally, there are friendly ads to help you pass the time if you're waiting for a train. But you may not have time to read them because the trains come so fast, about 2.5 minutes apart. The TTC cars pick up passengers at the rate of 20,000 an hour and sweep up litter on the tracks as well. As you see, a truly useful and unusual invention. If you want to get lost, or not get lost, handy guides show you the way. No smoking inside, but the trips are so short the chances are you don't want to smoke. Opening day, they made the whole distance in 12 minutes. And the shiny trains can move at the rate of 50 miles an hour. You've arrived at Bloor Street Station, almost before you've had time to say, Toronto Transportation Commission. A transfer will take you anywhere, or almost anywhere, once again, untouched by human hands. And so you're above ground again, your trip through the bowels of Toronto over. And you can take a streetcar. Yes, they're still running. The subway only runs 4.6 miles up Yonge Street. So you see, the skyline of Toronto has changed, and so have the people. Toronto got itself a subway. Really.